What is the college soccer recruiting timeline for the different tiers of Division 1, Division 2, and Division 3 soccer? I'm the college soccer. I help you play college soccer. Let's get into it. So if you want to play Division 1 college soccer at the top schools, Duke, Notre Dame, Santa Barbara, UCLA, you must start in 8th grade or just be the best player. So if you're just amazing, you're Gatorade Player of the Year, good for you. But for the rest of us who are not that player, which is most of us, you have to start in 8th grade if you want to give yourself the best chance. To give you an example, we had a student who just committed to Duke. Congratulations, Mr. Ethan. And he started in 8th grade with us starting to work together so that way we could get active. He'd already been, before he even met me, he'd already been to 5 ID camps of Duke before 9th and 10th grade. And he committed in 10th grade to Duke. So he's all done. He's a 26, and he's literally all done with the recruiting process for the next 2 years. And he's going to Duke, his dream school. Yes, he was a good soccer player, but there's a lot of good players. It was the aggressive nature we took, which is part of, if not the big reason why, he's already done being with the recruiting process, and then he got to go to his dream school. Yes, he was a good player. That was super important. That I'm not taking credit for. But the aggressive nature that we took on the process, I think, is the reason he committed. And if you ask him, he would tell you something similar. So having said that, that's for the top schools. Now, let's say you want to do a mid-tier or low-tier D1 school. What grade should you start? I would say 9th grade is when you should start the process for those schools. Here's the problem, though. The mid-tier and low-tier D1s are switching all the time. Yes, the UCLAs of the world and the Stanfords, they'll always be the big schools. But the problem you're going to face is sometimes a small D1 school is going to win. Like when Marshall won the NCAA a few years back for the first time, they weren't like a big name, and now they're a big name, and they only have international players. They've got like 3 Americans, and it's super competitive. So you should start in 8th grade. So the bottom line is you should start thinking about the process in 8th grade, collecting video, working on your club teams, start thinking about ID camps, especially if you're an elite level player. But having said that, mid-tier and low-tier D1s, they're constantly changing. Like I went to Valpo, small D1 school. We won the conference when I was there. We were ranked top 25. 3 of our players got drafted. I played pro soccer. So like our team was really good the 4 years that I was there. But then after that and before that, they were kind of a mid-tier, low-tier D1 school. So the mid-tier and low-tier, don't think of them as that because they change so often that any year one team could be the best. Like Western Illinois isn't considered a top D1 program, but they've killed it the last few years. So having said that, you want to be mindful of 9th, 10th grade is when you should start. This is for both boys and for girls. Girls, you really want to start in 8th, 9th grade. That's really non-negotiable for all levels, Division 1, Division 2, Division 3. Okay, now let's go to Division 2. So with Division 2 schools, if you want to go to a top D2, you have to recognize a couple things. First of all, the top D2 schools have a lot of internationals. There's a couple different rules with Division 2. You can go on trial with the team. Now you have to get invited. And 95% of the trials happen your junior spring and sometimes senior spring, but usually that's pretty late. So sophomore and junior spring are when the trials happen, which means they must know you by freshman, sophomore year at the beginning of those to give you the opportunity to go on trial during the spring of your sophomore year or the spring of your junior year. Now, they do rely heavily on internationals. They like players that are a little bit older. They do love transfer students as well from Division 1 to Division 2 or within Division 2. It does happen where Division 3 goes to Division 2, but it's pretty rare because it's very expensive. And if you're at a D3 school, you like they're prioritizing academics. So my point is to tell you, for the D2 schools, you must start in 10th grade. That's kind of a non-negotiable. If you're a girl, you got to start in 9th grade because they are really competitive. Now, let's say you want a mid-tier D2. I would still recommend 10th grade. It's when you already have your video. Hopefully, you're sending it out. You're going to schools. So collecting video starts in 9th grade. That's kind of non-negotiable. I would, of course, say do 8th grade because it'll just make your life better. Then you got to go to camps in 9th, 10th grade is when you should be going to camp. Now, if you want to go to a low-tier D2 and you know it, you could start in 11th grade. I would just make sure you already have videos sorted. And when I say start in 11th grade, the end of your sophomore year, going into 11th grade is when you would want to be active and start. Now let's do Division 3. Let's say you want to go to a top academic Division 3. Top academic are the NESCAC schools, Pomona Pitzer, Occidental. These you must start in 8th grade. This is non-negotiable. This is for boys and for girls. The reason is they are done recruiting in August of your junior year typically because they want kids to do ED1 and ED2. And while not every student will do that, they know they can leverage that because it's academics. These are academically minded schools. So they want kids that already know they want to go to their schools. And on top of that, they are the best soccer teams traditionally. The best academic schools in Division 3 are always or almost always the best academic schools. So you got to start in 8th, 9th grade if you're serious about those schools. Now, if you want to do a mid-tier D3, the gap between mid-tier and low-tier D3 can be kind of large. The gap between a low-tier D3 and a top D3 is pretty big. So that would mean you could start 10th, 11th grade. If you're like, hey, I want to start playing college soccer, but I want to go to a low-tier, mid-tier D3, you could get away with it, in 11th grade starting the recruiting process. But that's assuming you're doing my methods. Like, I don't know what you're doing and how slow you're working. Your tempo is different than mine. My tempo is we make videos every month. We make a highlight video every year. We send out literally hundreds of emails every month because I have this AI system where you can do that genuinely. So if you're going to start the process, you just have to start the process aggressively and you have to have a system in place. You don't want to be like, oh, I made one video. I went to one camp. I hope I get recruited. That's just not really enough to play college soccer. If you want more help playing college soccer, give me a call. Links in the bio. I'm looking forward to talking to you and we'll talk soon.